A lot of breaking news out of Israel and Iran with an interview between Bibi Netanyahu and Fox News just breaking. Some very important things we can start acknowledging now that we heard. First of all, there's an Associated Press report, according to U.S. officials, that Donald Trump vetoed an Israeli plan to kill the Supreme Leader, Khamenei. And Netanyahu was asked about this during his interview on Fox News just moments ago. He refused to acknowledge whether or not that was actually true. He does say, though, that Donald Trump will say things that are good for the United States, and Khamenei is someone who is known for tweeting death to Israel at the same time as pretending to negotiate with Israel. That was the response we got from Bibi just moments after asked, did Donald Trump shoot down the idea of taking out the supreme leader of Iran? This at the same time as we're getting this aerial footage of massive bombardments inside of Tel Aviv. These are potentially hypersonics and other ballistic missiles that got through the Arrow 3, Arrow 2, THAAD, and David Sling's defense systems. And of course, while the Iron Dome is great for shooting down some of these slower moving rockets, unfortunately not great for some of the fastest moving or falling ballistic missiles. Iran is expected to keep this war going on for months based on at least posts from the Iranian media. Now, the Iranian media is also suggesting that Iran is suffering so much right now that they're looking to turn schools and subway tunnels into bomb shelters because, unfortunately, they are getting bombarded and beaten up heavily as well. There are now reports that Mossad agents are potentially on the ground shooting individual targets within Iran with handguns, in addition to obviously the coordinated bombings inside of Tehran, to which there are also other rumors, and we have to be careful with war rumors because they could always be war propaganda, but there are also other warnings, or I should say rumors, that potentially people inside of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard are sending text messages freaking out about how Israel is able to strike so deep inside of Iran without Iran being able to defend themselves. This is where people say, well, this is what happens when Iran receives a coordinated attack from Israel, where not only did you potentially launch drones that were smuggled into the country via local commanders on the ground, or commandos, I should say, launching drones on the ground against air defense systems, paving the way for Israeli jets, potentially as many as 200 of them, to be able to strike targets they're looking for. Bibi Netanyahu says that we are giving Iranians advance notice to leave, and that's why there is now a mass exodus out of Tehran. This is the capital of Iran, and you could see what appears to be a clog of vehicles during daytime here trying to get out of the city as it continues to be bombarded by Israelis. And this sort of mutual bombardment is leading to a lot of death and destruction. Bibi was on Fox talking about how women and children are dying while they're asleep because bombs are hitting their apartment buildings, as we saw in some of this earlier footage we were playing. At the same time, we're hearing substantial reports of significant death tolls rising. Israeli strikes on Iran, according to The Guardian, kill at least 406 people, wounding 654 per human rights groups, as reported by the Associated Press. Significant human casualties now taking place, with additional airstrikes by Israel also taking place, potentially in refugee camps in the Gaza Strip, which obviously doesn't bode well for the Israeli international support that they're looking for. Bibi says that they're trying to root out terrorists, but we know that there have been mass civilian casualties as well as youth deaths, so people under 18 in Gaza, with the youth population expected to be about 50% of the entire Gazan population. Now, what we also see is that Israel's Bibi says that Iran at one point targeted his bedroom with a missile but failed to hit its mark. Some people are now speculating that because of Bibi's interview here, that the Ayatollah better leave. Donald Trump apparently said, hey, don't strike the Ayatollah. Again, reports that Donald Trump shut down or vetoed the plan to kill the supreme leader. Some people are speculating Donald Trump would do this to prevent a potential escalation via a religious religiously inspired warfare. Right now, you have a warfare that's inspired by nuclear weapons, or the prevention of proliferating nuclear weapons, or the expansion of nuclear weapons. Whereas if this now turns into a potentially religiously charged warfare, we might be in a place of even more casualties, more attacks, more death, and more destruction. Overnight, the United States Air Force, as well as the British Royal Air Force, helped aid in the defense of drones coming to attack the Israeli locations. Here you can see some photos of the Iranian drones shot down. These are unmanned aerial vehicles. You can see them here. Excuse me. A few various different shots here of these UAVs shot down in their larger fuel tanks. Remember, one of the reasons that you potentially have problems with fuel in these sort of combatant or these situations where there's also talk that one Royal Air Force fighter jet potentially had to land or conduct an emergency landing because of fuel starvation, is because remember the distance that you have between Iran and Israel. You're looking at over 2,400 kilometers between some of the targets between where Israel is launching their fighter jets from, or potentially Royal Air Force fighter jets off into in the sea, launching from aircraft carriers. To round trip this, a fighter jet just does not have the fuel capacity to pull this off, generally with a fuel range of around 1,900 kilometers. So typically what you do is you outfit these with external fuel tanks on all locations, under the wings and under the center of the actual aircraft. But that can still lead to fuel starvation in some of these aircraft if not properly managed. Here's some footage of an aircraft fighting, or what doesn't appear to be much of a fight. I should rather say taking out a drone. Looks like I may potentially have, unfortunately, a little bit of additional audio playing there in the background. I'll fix that in just a moment. But again, that's unfortunately one of the things that happens with X. You generally, you don't really know all these audio things that are playing. But anyway, multiple Iranian strikes also landing here in Tehran. I want you to see some of the footage of the sort of smoke billowing up various different locations here during the daytime. This could be what's contributing to this Iranian flight, essentially the fleeing of vehicles that we saw out of Tehran, which is also what Bibi talks about, this escaping of Tehran. Then, of course, unfortunately, you are also seeing the widespread destruction inside of Tel Aviv. I mean, if you look closely here, of course, X is going to give us a little bit of buffering here. You can clearly see impacts over here, which quite substantial. And unfortunately, what happens here is that Israelis aren't always going to be in their bomb shelters. They're frequently told, okay, it's now safe to return. And so you're doing this move where you're going inside and outside of bomb shelters. But in addition to that, a lot of Israelis also have bomb shelter rooms inside of their actual buildings. And it's possible that some of these bomb shelters may not be enough for a direct hit from something like a hypersonic missile. Hypersonics are really just ballistic missiles that travel faster than the speed of sound. They're obviously a lot harder to intercept. But one of the things that you want to pay attention to with a hypersonic is you may miss time, and it's unclear that this happened, but you may miss time the alerts that you're providing for people to get into shelters. Now, it's unclear that happened, but here's just an example of how quickly a hypersonic, relative to some of the other incoming artillery, could look like. And so here you go. So you can see that significant increase in speed that a hypersonic might have over a more traditional ballistic missile. And remember, ballistic missiles are, they call them ballistic missiles because they really just fall out of the sky. They don't actually accelerate towards the ground, whereas other missiles that can accelerate for the entire duration of flight would land significantly faster. So you've got different types of weapons that you can use. Typically a rocket, like something you might fire from a truck or some form of more mobile artillery feature, would only be fueled for the first maybe 30% of flight, and the rest is the arc that carries the rocket to its final destination, which does mean that the trajectory of the projectile can't be changed anymore, obviously once it doesn't have any fuel. This is very normal. So hypersonics sort of take this potentially to a different level. Now, something else that we need to talk about, which is really significant, is Bibi's threat that, or I should say warning, that the Iranian regime wants to have nuclear weapons, not for their own purposes, but rather to provide nuclear weapons purposefully to terrorist regimes such as the Houthis, which, if Tehran provides nuclear weapons to groups such as the Houthis, who are, quite frankly, frequently, often when the leaders are taken out, like what you see in Hamas, often go through cycles of new leaders, because you keep seeing leaders take out. You really have groups that potentially would almost be happy to unleash nuclear warfare to where Iran can wash its hands of deploying strategic nukes and suggest that, oh, wasn't us. And instead it was Iranian-backed proxy groups. Now, is it possible that that's just propaganda from Netanyahu, and that this is not actually something that's likely to happen? Of course, because that also implies that Iran is ready with nuclear weapons, which we're not entirely convinced of. And we've been told that Iran is close to a nuke in the 90s and the 2000s and the 2010s. It was weeks to go during COVID, and so we've regularly been told of this. Of course, this is something that Bibi is saying. Now, keep in mind, this is very much a lot of this information that we're getting now is not only coming from The Guardian and what we're seeing from news sources broadly from the Associated Press, Israeli media, what you're seeing from Iranian media. It's sort of a compilation of everything. And there's always a risk that there's propaganda mixed in, so you have to be careful and ultimately just sort of see with your own eyes. Now, there's talk that Russia and China and North Korea are potentially helping Iran move weaponry around, though others say what's actually happening is you're getting sort of a more abandonment of Iran. You've got Al Jazeera here suggesting that the U.S. Embassy in Iraq warns of potential attacks on sites frequented by Americans. This is why America has issued warnings to rapidly leave the Iranian area if you are a U.S. citizen. Preparations underway in Iran to turn public spaces into shelters, including schools, mosques, which potentially don't seem safe enough to use as a shelter, and so therefore potentially moving into using metro stations as well. You've got talk of airfields being bombarded, also frustration over the potential escalation coming in this warfare, but also not just hitting airports, but hitting these gas fields, these Iranian Qatar gas fields, dragging what's being referred to as the Persian Gulf oil and gas region into maybe a major strategic conflict. This is where you see betting markets suggest that, hey, we might be at a greater than 50% chance of the Strait of Hormuz being shut down because of these conflicts. Other sort of information that we're seeing is that 14 Iranian nuclear scientists have now been killed. This is on the Guardian live blog. Again, here you could see some imagery of central Israel, this specifically from Bat Yam, showing bedrooms here just sliced in half. This right here, a crib. Hopefully all of these individuals inside of this building were in shelters, but really the rubble of this has turned this building into what appears to be almost a parking garage because it's so devastated. So it's absolutely terrible what's going on, and unfortunately this conflict continues to escalate. And while there continues to be rising discussion of regime change, what you're really getting is more and more attacks from Iran and more counterstrikes from Israel. Obviously, Israel struck first with their quote-unquote preemptive strikes, but it's turned into this tit for tat. Now, Iran has said that they would be willing to stop if Israel is willing to stop. But Israel's Bibi just told us on Fox News, hey, we have to be careful. The Iranian regime is and I'm sort of bottom lining this for you so you don't have to listen to this whole thing here, but the Iranian regime is in a position where they are striking civilian centers, including, as Bibi says, my own home, whereas we are striking military targets. Now, of course, the Iranian media has disputed this, suggesting that apartment buildings in Tehran are being targeted as well, with, as we saw from the Associated Press and human rights groups, that potentially now as many as over 400 civilians in Tehran have already perished. So obviously each side can sort of share their propaganda the way they'd like, but you know, this is of course where the conversation gets into Gaza. But it's very clear that the IDF is still conducting their strikes deep in Tehran and also at the same time in the Gaza Strip. Just minutes ago, I'm getting reports here of sirens sounding in communities near the Gaza Strip. Details under review by the IDF. This is a statement from the IDF just moments ago. We've got footage from the Home Front Command's rescue forces at impact sites. So it looks like we've got some high-definition footage here directly from the IDF. It looks like this is a K9 here with some form of gas mask on, looking for survivors in parts of potentially Tel Aviv or central Israel. Obviously, yesterday we saw attacks against the port city of Haifa, which then there were a bunch of social media videos of circulating of people in Lebanon actually either cheering or potentially mocking the strikes against Israel, including one video where one individual was apparently playing a saxophone, watching as the bombs were dropping in Israel. It sort of shows you some of the odd, in a weird way, humanness of trying to find peace or, I suppose, entertainment during war, but then also somewhat the balance of disgustingness of, yes, people are still living their lives, and here are parties in Lebanon, and people are celebrating, taking a pause to take videos of the rain of hell coming, in this case, into the port city of Haifa, while people are still trying to be human. It's a very challenging balance. There's also, of course, the propaganda from Israeli media showing you the various different major generals that have been eliminated and how they are looking for almost every single general that they can get their hands on to take out as many of these Iranian leadership groups as possible. Also now leading to, these talks of, or I should say maybe even memes of the Ayatollah potentially now hiring to look for new staff in Iran. Here we've also seen multiple posts of people sort of wearing what appear to be iron pots, and again, some of these photos being shared as an irony of like, I have my own Iron Dome, so I'm okay to be outside. So these are, parody accounts that people are sharing posts of, but it shows you some of the balance that you're getting between the seriousness of what's going on, but then also just people in surrounding areas still trying to be human. More footage here from the IDF of rescue operations underway. Really no shortage of this on both the Iranian media accounts as well as the Israeli media accounts. And it is devastating to see that this continues to expand, with Bibi again mentioning that this war could go on for 14 days or more. There's also the potential fear that, Donald Trump has suggested that it's possible the United States could get involved here. It's obviously expected that we're already heavily involved with our THAAD missile defense systems and attack against drone vehicles that are coming into Iran or coming into Israel from Iran. There are also now illustrations. Oh, looks like they broke that link. Did they? Oh, yeah, here we go. Now illustrations coming out from the IDF. They really like doing these illustrations with their fighter jets coming out. I have to say, I kind of find them interesting as well. This now an illustration of the IDF's attack, or the Israeli Air Force's attacks, on targets inside of Yemen in this case. And so you can see how we're going for both targets in this case, in this video, how we're seeing targets simultaneously being struck in Iran as well as Yemen. And so we can see these sort of I think they purposely show a graphic of the fighter jets sort of launching them outside of the Yemenis airspace and then lobbing them into targets of either Iran or Yemen, clearly targeted, or at least allegedly targeted, at Houthi groups. So these are, here are infographics from the IDF showing that the Israelis are trying to target fuel tanks, not specifically oil or natural gas infrastructure, but rather storage tanks. This is also what Bibi mentioned on his Fox News interview, that they're specifically trying to target tanks and not the actual pumping infrastructure. So they're just trying to set back the Iranian infrastructure. Obviously, this will be disputed. Here are strikes on the Iranian regime's nuclear headquarters in the Tehran area, strikes on nuclear weapons development laboratories in the Tehran area, strikes on the Central Research and Development Facility for Chemical Materials in the Tehran area. Mind you, again, these are IDF sources, so I always want to give you this reminder that some of this is going to be true, and this may be what their intentions are. But sometimes bombs miss and hit apartment buildings, and you're just not going to see infographics of apartment buildings being targeted. All right? Strike on facilities for the centrifuge production in the Tehran area. And this is also where the IDF is requesting the United States involvement to help attack with bunker-busting weapons, such as the Ford facility, the nuclear facility, where potentially uranium enrichment could be as deep as 1.5 miles below the ground. There's also now talk, and this is an unconfirmed report, that the Syrian army is potentially deploying to the Iraqi border as there is suspected movement of Iranian-backed fighters coming from Iraq. Mind you, there are Iranian-aligned terrorist groups inside of Iraq that could potentially want to move from Iraq directly into Israel. And so that's why there's now talk of potentially the Syrian army mobilizing, though this remains an unconfirmed report. Obviously, this is a very developing situation. Iranian residents near nuclear reactors have now received 2 warnings to urgently leave. Now, what's terrible about this potential talk is it just reminds you of that HBO miniseries. Here I am pitching it again. It's almost like I'm sponsored by that HBO miniseries. I promise I'm not. I'm sponsored by life insurance. If any of this makes you nervous, you can get life insurance in as little as 5 minutes by going to metkevin.com/life. It's the same life insurance Lauren and I use. You can get it in as little as 5 minutes. You can Apple Pay, Android Pay for it. It's really easy. metkevin.com/life. But anyway, it makes you nervous that when we start talking about the potential bombing of nuclear reactors, that we're going to have some form of nuclear fallout that then spreads to different areas. I mean, consider what happened after Chernobyl. Children who ingested milk from cows who were eating grass contaminated with uranium fallout or nuclear fallout ended up having significantly higher cancer rates following Chernobyl because some stupid dust cloud with nuclear fallout floats over to surrounding countries and neighborhoods. So there are serious devastating consequences of potential nuclear warfare, and so this talk about evacuating residences near nuclear enrichment facilities is unnerving, and it should make everyone nervous. So that said, this gives us a breakdown of the Netanyahu interview this morning. There are obviously arguments on both sides as to whether or not Donald Trump has prevented strikes against Khamenei or not. The Ayatollah of Iran, some people say yes, other people say no. That also remains to be confirmed. I personally believe, based on what I saw in Bibi's reaction, that Donald Trump probably did say this, given that immediately afterwards he talked about how Khamenei chants death to Israel, and also that Donald Trump will do what's best for the U.S., and it's up to Israel to do what's best for Israel. So there's a breakdown broadly of exactly what's going on, or what's been going on in really the last 12 or so hours. Happy Father's Day, by the way. At the same time now, I'm literally just seconds ago, Israeli military says it has begun waves of strikes against dozens of surface-to-surface missile targets now in western Iran. Western Iran is closer to the Israeli side, so we're sort of expanding out now, moving from, here I was thinking I was done with the coverage on Iran, and now it looks like we are moving from striking closer to the capital, potentially to now moving closer to the western edges of Iran, to strike surface-to-surface missile launcher bays over here, and this is likely these are likely the missile launchers that are attacking Israel. It would make sense that they would be on the western side as you're significantly closer, providing and affording lower or less warning time, if you will, to Israel. But you still need to see these rockets go over Syria and Iraq, so there's obviously some degree of warning time. And then, of course, here you can see that sort of, potential Syrian border to Iraq. If there are indeed terrorist groups moving from Iraq to Israeli territory, they could also move through Jordanese landscapes, or the country of Jordan. So this is just a disaster. I think this is just the way to put it, and that gives you now more complete update on what's going on. Yeah, new wave of airstrikes now in western Iran.
Why not advertise these things that you told us here? I feel like nobody else knows about this.
We'll try a little advertising and see how it goes.
Congratulations, man. You have done so much. People love you. People look up to you.
Kevin Paffrath there, financial analyst and YouTuber. Meet Kevin. Always great to get your take.